It's one of the most original horror movies we've gotten in quite some time, and it could be a star-making turn for a gentleman who you've seen in many, many movies over the years, but probably don't know his name. Let's talk about Late Night with the Devil. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new film Late Night with the Devil. This is in theaters right now. It is a Shudder production. Shudder is a streaming service that has, a lot of horror and gore stuff on there, a lot of originals, but mostly with smaller budgets. So I'm not exactly sure what led this one to get a theatrical release. Perhaps a hugely successful screening at South by Southwest. Stephen King had a really nice, complimentary note about the movie, saying he couldn't keep his eyes off it. So I don't know, maybe the great buzz made them think, you know what, let's put this in theaters. But either way, you will also be able to get it on Shudder in just a few weeks if you do subscribe to that streaming service. I do not, so this is one of the few originals from Shudder that I've actually gotten the chance to see. If they're all like this, I'm all in, because this is a slight spoiler for my grade. This is a really, really good movie. But before we launch into the specifics on why and what the movie's about, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do movie and TV reviews here on the channel. Just about every day something new goes up, so there's always a lot going on. Please consider subscribing, click that like button, comment below, all that stuff. Okay, so the gentleman in question that I mentioned up at the top, this is a familiar face that you've seen in a lot of different movies, a lot of superhero stuff too. He was a part of the Ant-Man franchise. He was Polka Dot Man in the most recent Suicide Squad film. He did stuff for The Flash on the CW. Most recently, though, you may have seen him in Oppenheimer. But, there's 50 people in Oppenheimer, so, it's not like he had a super prominent role. But as soon as he came on the screen in this, I was like, I'm almost positive this guy was in Oppenheimer. And if not, he just has that look, because it takes place in the 70s, so he's got a more retro look. But his name is David Dastmalchian. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, because I've never even heard it said. But you've definitely seen him in a lot of different things, not just superhero stuff, but he shows up in a lot of different movies. He's definitely one of the character actors of the day. But this is, as far as I know, his biggest leading starring role, and I think he's pretty much in every scene of this movie. So, he really is carrying it. But this essentially is like a found footage type movie. Takes place on a late night talk show, Halloween night of 1977. And the show in question is called Night Owls with Jack Delroy. And this is a person who has his sights set on not necessarily maybe dethroning Johnny Carson, but at the very least competing with him. And the show has been on a few years, but ratings have been sagging. He had a very high-rated show when his wife was passing of cancer, and she came on. But since then, the show's ratings have declined, so he has reverted to more sort of stunty type shows, and so he puts together this really interesting group of people for this Halloween show, including a supposedly possessed girl with her sort of caretaker or whatever on the show, along with some other people, including a skeptic who really is trying to kind of take the wind out of everybody's sails on the show. So that's about all I'll say, I think, about the plot. It starts out, though, with like a 4 or 5 minute kind of retrospective montage of, who is this Jack Delroy, and, how did he get this show, and the success of it, and that kind of thing. So it starts out with that, and then we go into kind of the found footage stuff. And it's really real time. Like, once we get to the actual start of the talk show, it's real time. When they cut to a commercial break, we see kind of B-roll from behind the scenes of what was going on during the commercial breaks, in which we get a lot of exposition between characters and stuff. So I love real time. I think it's a very, very interesting way of doing storytelling. And I think, it doesn't always work, but I will always give something props for at least trying to tell the story in real time, because I don't think it's that easy to make something compelling in real time. I guess the show 24 was, probably, the most famous example of that in recent years, but there's been a lot of movies and less TV shows over the years that have done some real time stuff. But so that interests me. The fact that this takes place in the 70s on a TV late night show interests me. I fancy myself a bit of a TV historian, and I grew up in the 80s watching Carson and the early Letterman stuff. Not super early, I was like 4 or something when Letterman came on, but watching that kind of stuff, and then later on into some of these other talk shows, Arsenio and Dennis Miller and all that. So the talk show, the late night talk show format, very much interests me. But this movie also had to have a little bit more than that. It had to have a compelling narrative, which it does. It had to hold my interest for the real-time feel, which it certainly did. And, at the top, I mentioned how original this movie is. It really is. Because of the format and because of the subject matter, it's really, kind of keeping us guessing and keeping us on this train. The entire time, whether it's behind the scenes during a commercial break or live, what the audience at home might have seen. Now, at the end, I will admit, it goes a little bit, I don't want to say off the rails, because it doesn't, but there's, the last, the big ending, climax is definitely interesting. I do think they stick the landing, though. For a few minutes, I was like, oh, okay, is this going into, like, this other territory that's a little bit too off of what we've been kind of watching this whole time? But I actually thought they stuck the landing really well, and so I have to give it credit for that. And this guy, David I have to look at it to say it because it's a confusing name, Dastmalchian. I really think this could be, if this movie, keeps getting some traction, I think he could become a bigger star from this movie, just because we've seen him so much, in the background and as a supporting character. But he is great as this host. He's got all of the mannerisms, and the set design and the costuming is all period perfect. But you really believe that he is a late night talk show host. He is, like I said, the mannerisms are perfect. His way of speaking is perfect. His interviewing skills, his style is, this sort of awkwardness of the monologue when a joke doesn't do that well. Like, all of that, I don't know if he studied, old Carson tapes or whatever, for the longest time, really, until, and Letterman aired after Carson on the same network, there wasn't really any, competitors to Carson. You watched Carson or you went to bed. And so it's interesting to have this narrative where, this guy supposedly had a fairly successful run at a talk show for a few years opposite Carson. But anyway, that's more stuff maybe inside just that I particularly cared for. But this is a very, very well-made movie. Easily so far one of the best of the year. Most of my grades have actually been in the average to more negative column for the year. This is easily the best horror movie of the year so far by a clear mile. For now, I leave Late Night with the Devil with an A-. But this is one of those movies where it's like, it's sort of right on that edge. I could see leaving this by the year's end with an A. Definitely check it out in theaters. It was not a packed house when I saw it, but there was probably 15 or 20 other people in the theater, and audible gasps and stuff when stuff was going on. So this is the movie you kind of do want to see in a theater. So all right, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.